And he joins us this morning on the Harbor One hotline, and it has been a while. Hello, Sean McDonough.
Hello, Greg. How are you this morning?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to be on with you guys.
36 times the President's Trophy has been handed out. Only 8 of those teams went on to win the Stanley Cup. Is that jinx real in your mind?
No. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I certainly don't believe in the announcer jinx. I've been blamed for things over the years. You say, oh, the guy's made 12 free throws in a row, and then he misses one, and, of course, it's your fault. So I'm not a big believer. If we could control the outcome that way, I would certainly be over at the sports book at Encore placing wagers on games if we could influence the outcome. So, no, I don't think so. I just think, the President's Trophy thing, like in the case of last year, Florida Panthers won it, but I think they were only a point or two ahead of the next team, which I believe was Colorado. So, most years it's parity, right? I mean, the team that wins the President's Trophy doesn't run away like it looks like the Bruins might this year. I mean, the Bruins right now are 11 points ahead of anybody else. That would be Carolina right now, and that's amazing given how well Carolina's played. But I'm not a believer in that.
Yeah, I mean,
I would look at it the other way, right? It's probably due that the President's Trophy winner is going to win the Stanley Cup one of these years.
I mean, I guess the danger is that you buy your own hype and you go into the playoffs expecting that you're going to beat everybody. But this team doesn't seem like a team that would happen to.
No, I don't think so. I think a big part of their success is just the remarkable attitude that they have. The self-belief. I think they're good. They know they're good. And they should know that because they've played exceptionally well, really, in every facet of the game. Lately the power play has struggled, as Kevin DuPont chronicled in the Globe this morning. But, for the most part, we had their game this past Saturday against the Rangers, and one of the things we talked about, Ray Ferraro and me, in the opening of the telecast was that they're really a team without a discernible weakness, or at least have been to this point in the season. So, I think they're very focused. I think there's a great drive to win and win now. I mean, you saw, Greg, what they did at the trade deadline. I mean, They are all in. They don't have a lot of draft picks the next few years because they used a lot of them to bring in some of these reinforcements who have immediately been really good pickups. So, Bergeron's 37. It's Krejci, obviously, is 36. Marchand's closer to the end than he is the beginning. Obviously, he's 34. So, I think they're focused knowing that, this is the time if they're going to do it.
Sean, obviously you've done hockey for ESPN. How does it make you feel when somebody like, Stephen A. Smith or Molly Quorum, I think is his First Take, they have so much of this, like people know who they are, and then they don't go on there and they don't promote hockey, which, if you've been watching all year long, there's so much to promote about the sport, and they kind of like sweep it under the rug, and they're co-workers of yours.
Well, that's what Curtis does. I don't like that about Curtis. Curtis does that all the time on the show.
That is hurtful.
Yeah, I was surprised by what they said. I understand, maybe they don't follow it as closely as they follow the other sports, and they don't want to talk about it as much as they do the other things that they talk about. But, yeah, I was surprised by the extent of the commentary, which is basically I didn't see it, but I read about it and heard about it, that they just weren't going to talk about hockey. I think they asked Michael Kay to pick the New York team that was most likely to win a championship next, and he said the Rangers, and they slapped that down because they didn't want to hear about it. So, I was a little bit surprised by that, but, I'm going to stick to my own lane here. But I will say this, we did not have the NHL for 17 years. ESPN lost the rights, and it was on NBC, and they did a great job. But, we had it back, and I know everybody in the company, maybe with the exception of the people you mentioned, are really excited to have it back because the ratings have been great and, interest is high. And, Mark Messier's on this promo where he talks about the game's never been better, and I think that's true. I mean, it's certainly faster than it was 17 years ago, which was the last time that I was doing the NHL. So I think everybody at ESPN is really excited that we have it. And if some people don't want to talk about it, they're entitled to that. It's their show.
Sean, listening to you talk about the weakness, or I guess lack thereof, for this Bruins team, when you look towards the postseason and being devil's advocate, who's a team that you think they could face that could maybe expose a weakness? They say a new season once the postseason starts that could expose a weakness for this Bees squad.
Well, it's a great question. I think the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be tough. I think most of the best teams in the NHL, and everybody would agree with this, are in the East. The second best team, I think, pretty clearly is Carolina. I watched a little bit of their game the other day against Tampa Bay, the team that's been in the Stanley Cup final the last 3 years and won it twice, and they completely shut them down. Now, Tampa's been scuffling a little bit here for the last 5 games. But, Carolina would be the team that concerns me the most just because they are so good on the defensive end. Their goaltending is a little bit of a question. Freddie Anderson's had a really good track record in the regular season, but the thing with him is, he needs to prove it in the postseason. So he'll need to prove it in this postseason. But, they're the kind of team that can shut down another team. They just play great team defense, and they emphasize it. So, of the teams in the Eastern Conference, the ones that would scare me the most, it would be Carolina.
Sean, awesome to have you back on the show. You are the best at what you do. Dupes had this tweet, which I found amazing. There have been 33 games the Bruins have played this year where the opposition has not led for a second of each of those games.
I know, it's crazy.
The Bruins,
Absolutely
in my
crazy.
view, the Bruins, in my view, Sean, are the best regular season team we have had since the 2007 Patriots. As a guy that's from here, followed the teams, could this be one of the all-time Boston seasons if they end this with the Cup?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and unless they went totally in the tank here for the last 20 games, which I can't see happening given the way they're playing. And really from day one, and as you know, Chris, I mean, it was against the backdrop of, they're going to get off to a rough start. McAvoy's not going to be ready at the start of the season. Marchand, Grzelcyk, they're all coming off surgeries. New coach, they'll have to adjust to that system. And they came flying right out of the box and never looked back. As you guys know, I mean, they just set the record for the most points in the fewest games to get to 100 points. They did it in 61 games. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then someone sent me the Montreal Canadiens in 76-77 had set the record. They got to 100 points in 62 games. So a friend of mine said before, hey, we get all excited about what the Bruins accomplished, and it's, not to be diminished. But back in those days, as you guys know, they didn't, you didn't get it. Once the game ended in regulation in a tie, that was it. It was a tie. You got 1 point. So you didn't have the opportunity like you have now in overtime or in the shootout to get the additional point. Well, through those 62 games in 1976-77, Montreal had 10 ties. So that was 10 more opportunities that they would have had to get another point if they went to overtime. And they had 9 Hall of Famers on that team. That was, Mahavlich and Corway, Guy Lafleur. Ken Dryden was in the goal. I think they might have done pretty well in shootouts with Ken Dryden playing the net. So I don't think we can make the statement, even if the Bruins continue to set all these records, that they're the greatest team of all time. But I think to answer your question in a very long-winded way, Chris, it's certainly one of the best seasons ever by a Boston team if they keep going along like this, and one of the great seasons in NHL history. But it's hard to say it's the best, given what I just said. I don't think anybody would say this Bruins team is better than that Montreal team.
Speaking of tweets, as Curtis just was, Jack Edwards just tweeted, like Sean McDonough, but he's a little low energy.
Jesus!
Well, compared to Jack, that might be the case. Jack is very high energy. I like Jack. I've known Jack for a very long time. I mean, when I started out doing the Nesson Red Sox pregame show, literally in the mid-'80s, before I started doing the play-by-play, Jack was just starting out Channel 5. I think he was like the number 3 guy. They had Mike Lynch and Mike Dowling and Jack. And Jack and I used to sit in the press box a lot next to each other and watch the games while he was covering it for Channel 5, and I was waiting to go down and interview whoever the Red Sox star of the game was. So I have a great appreciation for Jack. I have heard it much discussed at this station and elsewhere. Maybe his style isn't for everybody, but I think he is true to himself, and I admire that about him. He's not on there trying to do it any other way than what comes naturally to him, and I think that's the way we should all go about this.
No Sox games for you this year, right? Are you going to miss?
Oh, no, I'll be back. I guess, okay. Come on, you're not reading the memos coming down the hallway.
Ken sends...
You're trying to get rid of me. That's fine. I mean,
he sends 100...
This law group segment will suffice. But,
he sends 100 emails a day. Nobody can read all of them.
He does send a lot.
The last one...
No, I will be there for 25 games. Okay. It's with Joe and Will and Lou and looking forward to it. Hey, all these wins in spring training have the optimism level ratcheting up fast, so you never know.
Oh, my apologies. Last email he sent was that they were trying to do a trade deal for restaurant gift certificates with you. So I didn't know how. I didn't know how that was going.
I told him, I would do it for the old Eastern Clothing of Watertown gift certificates we used to give out back in the old Channel 38 days to our in-between period guests. One of the great places in America.
So, Sean, the Bruins welcome in the Oilers tomorrow night. Connor McDavid is, I don't think it's quite getting enough recognition of how good of a season he is. He's already up to 124 points. He has a chance, at the pace he's going, to get to 150, which would be the most by any player in the NHL since, 96, when Lemieux had 160. Are people just, is Connor McDavid just not getting recognized enough because of, the Stephen A. Smiths of the world maybe not pumping up hockey as much as they could? Or is it just he is just kind of stuck in Edmonton and Edmonton's a fine team?
Yeah, I think it's probably more the latter. He plays in Edmonton, not the biggest market, doesn't get on American TV a lot, but I don't generally go to many games that I'm not working, just as I go to enough sporting events that I am working. But I'm going to go in tomorrow night, really just as a fan, and also to do some preparation because we have the game Saturday on ABC, the Bruins in Detroit. So, and I'm going in really because it's, I don't want to miss a chance to watch them in person if I can. So we had the All-Star game last month down in Fort Lauderdale. The day before the game, we probably had 20 or so of the players come through a little room while we did some interviews and got some sound bites, and we asked just about all of them about McDavid, and they all said the same thing. He's the best player in the world, and it's not even close. He's in his own category, and it's crazy how much better he is than everybody else. So he's having, as you said, a historic season. He's going to do things that haven't been done since Gretzky and Lemieux, and I think at the end of the day, he's a long way. I think he's 26, so he's a long way from the end of his career. But if he's not already in that pantheon in terms of how he's considered with Lemieux and Bobby Orr, who to me will always be the greatest hockey player of all time, Gretzky, he's on his way there for sure.
Sean, when you look at the Bruins team and they have so much talent on the team itself, how much credit do you give Jim Montgomery to bring out that talent? You look at last year and then this year, it's the same stars really, but just a completely different team.
Yeah, I give him a lot of credit. It was interesting, right? Because when they fired Bruce Cassidy, a lot of us were surprised. I was disappointed as somebody who cares about the Bruins. I thought he did an excellent job, and I like him a great deal as a guy. Now, I didn't have to play for him, and I think it became pretty clear that, the more you heard the stories, he's a really good coach. I ran into Cam Neely at the Garden not too long ago. He talked about Bruce is a great coach, but sometimes, you just need to change the message. Sometimes a guy who's a little hard on the players, particularly in this day and age. It doesn't age well over 6 years, and 6 years is a very, very long time for an NHL coach. I think the average stint is 2.5 years in the National Hockey League. So, I think Cam and Don Sweeney, as it turned out, made a good decision. It worked out very well for Bruce. He's doing a great job in Vegas, and I think that was a team that kind of needed his style of leadership. And, I think it was a breath of fresh air for these players to have kind of the opposite end of the spectrum in Montgomery, who's relentlessly positive. And I think the other big thing he changed. Last year, the Bruins were really kind of a 1.5 line team, a 2-line team. They tinkered with the top couple of lines to try to balance them. It didn't always work, and they got nothing from the third and fourth lines. And as you said, Courtney, it's the same guys. Mm-hmm. But Jim Montgomery's just kind of changed. It's a attacking mode. It's get the puck, turn, and go. The defensemen are a big part of the offense. They're charging toward the net. They go in deep into the corners when they're in the offensive zone and try to be a part of the offense. So, they're getting much more from guys the same guys they didn't get it from last year just because of the approach. So I think he's a huge part of their success, and I think he's a great guy, and I'm really happy for him.
Sean, as always, a pleasure. We will be watching Saturday on ABC. What, Wiggy?
I was going to say, we did this with Boomer. It didn't work out. Any chance we can get a Greg Hill show name drop on
ABC?
On the broadcast.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll have to find a creative way to do that.
Well, you're creative.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know what? I've done stupider things. We had the member at Boston Golf Club this past summer
Well, that's
my partner
relatable.
and I made it into the shootout. There were two other guys, Hayes Holmgren, who's probably like 15 years old, 13 years old, and his dad. Hayes is a really good player. I said, Hayes, if you intentionally shank the shot here in the shootout, you're going to make a tackle for the University of Alabama this fall when I do a football game for the University of Alabama. And he looked at his dad like, really? And I said, yeah, I'm serious. You're going to run down on covering a punt, and Hayes Holmgren's going to make a tackle. So his dad said, you better not do that. So if we can do that, we can certainly find a way to get the Greg Hill show.
Greg's a great hockey player. He talks about how great.
I mean, it's true. I don't like to talk about myself much, but
That's right.
Maybe a Wiggy. Maybe just bring up Wiggy.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm a bear league MVP up at Hockey Town. So
Yeah, I can mention that. Maybe I'll mention you guys were very surprised that Stephen A. Smith didn't want to talk about the Bruins.
right.
Wiggy.
Because I feel like PK's doing a great job.
Wiggy gets
Him
right
and
to
Kevin
it.
Weeks.
Wiggy gets right to it,
Well,
Sean.
I mean,
you know that.
I was disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a hockey fan, Sean, so I was disappointed.
Okay.
Yeah, I was disappointed too, But hey, Stephen A. He says provocative things, and if anything, it brought attention to hockey, right? We're
That's
talking
right.
about it right now.
There you go.
All right, we will, and we're going to make this a weekly feature. So we'll.
Yeah, you're stuck with me.
You're stuck with us.
I know.
So we'll talk.
And now I'm going to have to check and make sure I'm really coming back for those 25 Red Sox games. I thought that was all set, but
No, that's on me. Obviously I got the email. I missed it somehow.
that's all right.
Ken's shaking in his
I'm
boots.
staying as long as Joe Castiglione's staying, and right now I think that's about 2038. It's probably going to be the last season for our man Joe Castig. He's going to outlast us all.
Greg will be there as long as it's before the third inning. Anything after the third.
Oh no, he'll be able to stay longer now because
That's true.
going a lot faster. Looking for him down in those rich boy seats right behind home plate.
Sometimes I come up and visit the booth. Sean and I talk a little play-by-play strategy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Always fun.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they'll have a surprisingly good year. I'm a little more optimistic than I would have been a couple months ago. So we shall see.
Why? Because
So let's worry about the Stanley Cup first, right? And then we can get to that.
Yeah. But wait, why are you more optimistic? Because of spring training?
No, I don't put a lot of stock in spring training. Although it was good to see Sale out there the other day and pitch a couple innings and seemed like everything went well. Yeah, some of what they did I like. I just think it's a lot of. They have a million ifs, right? And they all kind of, if they all come together, then, there's a chance that they could be competitive, particularly in the expanded playoffs. But, I like some of what they did, a lot of what they did, actually, in the offseason. Unfortunately, it was not bringing Xander back that got most of the attention, but some of what they did was, I thought, pretty good.
Yeah.
The bullpen is a lot better, and that was probably the number one priority. So, well, let's be cautiously optimistic. Then, we can wait, as usual, till they lose on opening day, and then everybody can be negative.
All right, Sean, we'll talk to you next week. You're the best.
See you later. Thank you.